Welcome to another edition of the McAnulty Method. We are here with financial expert Frank McAnulty, who's going to share his knowledge and wisdom with us. Also joining us, we have Colin Sorrells, who will share his wisdom and knowledge. And it's good to see you guys.
Good to be here, Bill.
Good to be back. Missed y'all last week.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for joining us. I just want to dive right into this because Colin, you brought up a great topic, and as somebody who has gone back and forth on this a number of times, I'm anxious to see what you and Frank have to say about it. So let's just kick it off with the electric vehicle question.
Yeah, so this came about. I'm driving down the mountain, and we have an Arco. I always loved Arco because they were the only place where I could get any reasonably priced gas. Whatever Chevron or Shell was selling it for, 20 cents less at Arco. Well, they got rid of our Arco and replaced it with a Chevron, and there's a Chevron across the street. So now gas is $4.50. I go to the casino to see, oh, it'll be cheaper here. I think it's $4.20. So gas prices have just been skyrocketing. I think I paid, 60, $70 to fill up my Camry. So I can't even imagine if you have an SUV what that's costing you. And that's for the 87. So really the thought came to me is like, it might be time to go electric and, at least look into what those costs are and whatnot. But before I dive into my whole spiel, Frank, any thoughts on electric vehicles, the whole deal with gas prices, making that switch?
Well, it's sort of like asking a room full of economists for an opinion. You're gonna get a different one from every person there. I've read a lot of articles on this. For a while, all the articles were saying electric car was cheaper per mile over its life. But then just recently, somebody's come out with an article that says, well, no, not necessarily. Depends on a lot of things because they're ignoring the cost of your time if you're traveling and waiting for the car to charge. They're ignoring the cost of actually paying for the charging at commercial chargers. They're ignoring the cost of the charger and all of these things. So I think in California with our gas prices, quickly approaching $5 a gallon, it's approaching the level of where a gas or an electric car is a better deal. But once again, what are you buying? Are you buying a $30,000 electric car? Or are you buying a $120,000 or $140,000 Porsche electric car? It it there's way too many factors to go into it. Are they getting better? The electric cars? Yes, I think that was the biggest thing that kept a lot of people. Well, it might run out. Even though most of us never drive more than 100 miles a day, there's always what if I want to go to Vegas syndrome. So yeah, Colin, it's not an easy answer. And unfortunately, with a lot of things like this, they're always shaded by whether you want to save the planet or you're not that concerned with saving the planet. You just want to drive what you want to drive.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's been, I think one of the big things that made people think about it, though, and I'll pull up this graph here in a second, is Tesla came out with their new, was it the Model 3, I think, which is their new, 30, 40 grand is what it costs you. But there's been mixed reviews about, you're saving money up front, but it's not as reliable. There's all kinds of maintenance costs. So let me share a little graph. And I think, Frank, you make another great point about just how there's so many factors that go into this, right? Now, this graph here is based on just sort of the basic factors, right? So it's what you pay for the car when you buy it. These are all 2020 prices. It's a rough estimate of what it's going to cost you to insure the car every year, a rough estimate of what you're going to pay in maintenance every year, and a rough estimate of what it's going to cost you to either fill up your tank or charge your car based on California prices. So I tried to get a couple of different idea or cars in here. So this orange line at the top, that's Tesla's top model. And so you can see pretty clearly far and away, it's going to be hard to justify making that switch just from an economic perspective. And we have a BMW, of course, you're paying the 91, which if you're doing that, you're already at $5 a gallon. But I thought this was interesting down here. So this is more just your standard vehicles. So this top line is Tesla's new Model 3. And the thing you're kind of seeing is, it's the gap's sort of closing at the top. I think, this is over 10 years. We'd have to really expand it out for it to close significantly. So I think, Frank, you're making the good point. We're maybe not quite at the point where it's going to save you money, but you also made another great point about, are we getting there? And so that's sort of this dark line here that's starting to intersect with some of the other lines, is if Tesla could get the price of their car down to, $30,000, $25,000, something, something on par with what Toyota's doing, or Honda, or any of the traditional manufacturers. So,
well, I noticed the one on the bottom was the Prius.
right, which is the next part. We should talk about the hybrid. Maybe that is the way to go.
To me, it is the way to go. I have a Prius. And the reason I have a Prius is because I also have an Xterra, which most mileage I could get out of that was 21 miles to the gallon, and I was driving that quite a bit. And the last time gas prices got up to $5, I'm like, okay, this is costing me $900 a month in gas. I need to do something. So I bought a Prius. And my commute was so bad that my gas mileage in the Prius was like 65 miles to the gallon, because it was on electric more than it was on gas. And even now, with traffic better than it was, and I drive different ways now. I just noticed before coming up here today that I'm at 48 miles to the gallon, which to me, pretty darn good. I mean, especially Bill and I grew up at an age where, hey, we got 12 miles to the gallon, we're rocking. So 48's a heck of a lot better. Now, does it take off? Does it zoom off like the Tesla? Does it have all the neat bells and whistles? No, but it's really just to get me around. And I think that's part of it too. What do you need the car for? Go ahead, Bill?
That's a great question, because I mean, one of the arguments that I always hear about electric cars, and I've made it myself, even though we own one at this point, is, what if you do have to drive in an extended period? You're going to travel over 100 miles, or even you're traveling 100 miles, but you want to go uphill and have the air conditioner on. It really sucks up the juice. So I think to a great extent, it depends a lot on what you were just saying, what you use it for.
Well, and people always forget that, look at California. Every time it gets hot or even cold now, we're warned about, potential brownouts, blackouts, because the grid can't handle it. Well, if we plug in another 5 million cars at a time, I mean, there's all these infrastructure costs that have to be taken into account. Now, will that be handled over time? I would assume so. I'm also hearing about new batteries that they're coming out with that can recharge, in a third of the time, that can hold twice as much energy, for want of a better term. So you can maybe get to Vegas on one charge. It's an ever evolving thing. If in a perfect world, I think you could have whoever commutes in the house has the electric car that you're not going more than 20, 30 miles a day, no problems. And then you have one car that maybe the bigger car, the family car that, like I said, like we talked about, hybrid to me, is the perfect solution at this time, because I can go 400 plus miles in the Prius. Heck, I can drive to New York in the Prius. All I got to do is stop every now and then, spend 5 minutes putting gas in it, and keep going. Um, so it almost comes. It's so many things. Everybody wants to say, well, it's cheaper this, it's cheaper that. You know, let's face it. What makes you happy? you, we talk about financial things and saving money and putting money away, but eventually you got to have some fun. You got to do what you enjoy. You got to have a vehicle that you enjoy. And yeah, I personally, I can't suck down the idea of a $80,000 Tesla, because it's like, okay, that there's no way this makes economic sense.
All right. And that makes sense to me. 'Cause, yeah, it seems crazy. So, Colin, one last word from you.
Yeah,
Electric vehicle, yay or nay?
Electric vehicle. You know, I think our conclusion here today is that at this point, with the way gas prices are, and people I'm sure feeling the same way I did, driving, oh my God, I can't believe gas prices are that. I could save so much money this way. I think the thing you look at, if it's purely electric in the long run, you're probably not going to save as much money as you think, because Frank brings it up. There's so many factors. Your insurance is going to be higher. Your maintenance might be higher. How often you have to get maintenance. There's so many things you have to take. What the registration is going to be. I'm sure it's through the roof on a Tesla. So, I think that's part A, and then I think part B is if you're really looking to save money, I think the hybrid is the true way to go.
And not to argue with you, Colin, but I hate to say this, or I don't hate to say it. All indications are that the maintenance on the electrics are less than maintenance on internal combustion engines, until you get to the point where you have to change out the batteries. But no one intends to hold their car that long. I think that's the other issue. Everybody leases their cars. They get them for 3 years and they go away. I buy my cars and I drive them until they just don't work anymore, because I don't like wasting money on cars.
All right. Well, I think that I think we'll leave it there for now and just keep watching. And again, like so many things you talk about, Frank, you always bring it up. It kind of depends on what you're going to use it for and what you like. So at this point, we don't have a definitive answer on the electric versus gas, but I think you gave us a pretty clear idea about what we should consider at least.
Keep an eye on it.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, Bill.
I think that wraps it up for us this time, and I will see you guys at the next edition of the McAnulty Method.